That's how war should be. That's what the Middle East versus, you know, these countries, America, all this conflict should be people. And that's how I think friendship should be. It should be, you're trying to do so much for your friend, and then he's like, shit, Ty just did so much for me. I'm gonna one up this guy. And it would be an escalation of competition, but wouldn't that be a nicer world? I'm gonna talk about something that a little bit pisses me off, but it reminds me of a good lesson in life. Here's what's gonna happen in life. You're gonna help somebody out, okay? And about a year from the time you help them out, they're gonna get cocky and pretend they did it all on their own. Trust me, especially you entrepreneurs. So I've dealt with this situation more than once. It's on my mind right now for certain reasons, but I've tested many reactions you can have to it. And this is a general reaction when people basically you feel are taking advantage of you or not giving you the gratitude that you deserve for what you did for them. And this is an epidemic in the damn world. And it's basically this. We give you number one principle. It's an overarching principle so you don't get taken advantage of. A lot of people will tell you that, you know, just rise above it. And I think Michelle Obama said, you know, when people go low, you should go high. Well, there's some truth to that. But everything has a flip side to it, and there's also some real dangers of taking that approach. Believe it or not, scientists have actually solved this problem for you. They've done millions of simulations in something called game theory, and the best reaction you can have in terms of your behavior towards others is called tit for tat. There's a good book on this by Richard Dawkins called The Selfish Gene, and there's other research on it. Basically what it means is you start out nice with people, and then you reciprocate. So let's say you help somebody out. Let's do an example. Somebody says, hey man, can you help me move? I'm moving on Saturday. So you start out nice. You make the first move, which is like, sure, you're my friend. I'm gonna help you move. So you move them on a Saturday. A year later, you're moving. So you shoot a chat to that friend, a text to that friend, you say, hey, I'm moving. You mind helping me? If they text you back and say, oh, well, I'm busy right now, I'm not sure I can make it. You can either ignore it, and the problem with ignoring it is, one, it will eat you alive and ruin your friendship. Number two, it will give them the license in the future to do it again. So the best thing to do is you have to reciprocate, because basically they were not being nice, so you can be a little bit mean back. And be like, I would suggest being not passive aggressive here. Just be straightforward. Just go right back and say, wait a second, I'm a little confused here. You don't have to go into a rampage right away, but you can say, I'm a little confused. Last year when you needed help, I showed up and I was super busy. You're just gonna write me a text back that I don't think that's right. And you can appeal to human sense of justice. There's a book by Oren Klaff called Pitch Anything. He's a master of helping people raise capital. He's raised over $1 billion or more for businesses. And he has a good concept of a frames. And so this is the number two tip. When people are taking advantage of you, there's different approaches you can take back. You can yell, you can ignore, but you need to react, and I think the best way to react is one of these frames that Oren Klaff talks about called the morality frame. So if you use authority frame, if you just say to your friend, hey, well, I moved you, you need to do what I say, people will resist being bossed around. So that's not always effective. But if you appeal to a sense of justice, humans like justice and they don't like to see injustice. There's a great example of this. You know, the President of the United States is probably the most powerful position in the world, and there's a story where Mother Teresa, who was this, you know, nun who gave all her money, had no real power, you know, just was in India helping the poor. One of the presidents, she was at the White House, and she was scolding him because she said he wasn't giving enough aid to like India, foreign aid. And all the White House was just watching this little old lady yelling, not yelling, but like sternly talking to the president like a mother. And they were like, Nobody does that to the president. You do that to the president, you can be out of the White House and maybe off the planet, depending which president it was. Nixon might put you to sleep since it was assassins. But they said the reason that she could do that is because she was coming from a morality frame as somebody, and you could argue, I know there's some books that Mother Teresa is not a good person, fucking retarded books, but whatever. She could come from that moral frame because she could say, listen, I've given all my money. She took a vow of poverty when she was like 13 years old. She's never had a bank account. She said, I have no money. You have all this wealth. It's not fair that you have it and you won't help 40 million starving children in India. And when that justice kicks in, even the most powerful person in the world shuts up and listens to you. So when you're dealing with people that are taking advantage of you, I suggest you take that number 2 moral frame. It's very powerful. Better than justice, like do what I say, or better than indignation where you just yell and rant and scream. That doesn't always work. The third thing is, at some point, you know, you have to stand up to people. And so I've tested this. There's a lot of myths out there. People, like I said, I don't totally agree. I respect Michelle Obama. I think she's amazing. Maybe she'll be a president one of these days. But going high when other people go low doesn't always work. And I'll give you a classic example to prove this in history. There was a man named Adolf Hitler. Okay? 1937, 1938, 1939, he invaded Poland. Now you can argue this, it's a long, complicated story about what happened. But the United States decided to take the high ground. Okay, we're gonna let, that's, you know, okay, we're gonna let that go, da-da. Well, Hitler almost took over the world. Sometimes you gotta step up and stand up to people, whatever that might mean. That might mean you gotta bring the army, bring the military. Sometimes you gotta stand up to people and say, listen, you do that again, you know, you don't have to be violent necessarily, but I see these videos of like bullies in school and stuff like that. I'm like, where's all the kids, other kids, even if you're not this moral crusader, you see a little kid getting picked on by a big kid. There's no other big kid that just wants to be like, dude, pick on someone your own size. If the world had more people standing up, and that's called righteous indignation. And you see that even people that are supposed peacemakers, like Martin Luther King Jr., Jesus Christ, Gandhi, they stood up sometimes even to violence and put themselves on the line. I'm not going to get into the pacifist. You know, Malcolm X had a different approach than Martin Luther King Jr. He was a little more violent, but the point is they both stood up to it. And it'd be a better world we lived in where people stood up to it. So you can just start in your own little world. Joel Salatin came and I found out he had taken an idea from my business. I would call him up and be like, did that make you $1 million, Joel? Make you 100 grand? That's the least I could do for you. You mentored me when nobody believed in me, you know, when I was just starting out at 19. So take every trick and secret that I have. And I don't stand for that shit anymore. And one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur is I got enough money now, nobody can tell me what to do. I don't have to kiss anybody's butt. I don't care who comes in here. It could be the richest man in the world. If they're being a dick, I'm gonna be like, bye, you know? And so I think that's an important thing. And what happens is, this is why I believe, speaking back to this bully issue, the number one thing that should happen is they should teach kids Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, especially the runtiest kids. So if you got a kid that's not that strong, don't be telling your kid to take the damn high ground and just be above it all while he gets beat the crap out of him this whole 10 years of going from elementary. Forget that. Enroll your 6-year-old in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm telling you, it'll take about 1 or 2 years. My friend Joe, he got his 7-year-old. You know what I'm talking about, Craig? Joe's little son, he's 7 years old. He's this little kid. He's not big, and he is destroying people. So he's a little bit on the small side. I mean, he's small. He's gonna be real short for his age by the time he gets 14. But by the time he's 14, he's gonna have the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ear. You know, he's gonna be a little cocky. He's gonna be probably operating at, well, you can't get a blue belt, but he's gonna be a badass. And so people are gonna leave him alone.
So you can't always just this hyper simplification of human relations where it's like, oh, just always take the high ground. No, it doesn't work. It didn't work in history. It almost got us blown up in Pearl Harbor. You know, you got to stand up. And America made that mistake in 2 wars. World War One, we didn't enter the war until 2 years after. World War One was 1914 and 1918. It ended in November 11th at 11 a.m. on 1918. My grandma was born. She was born during World War One. America didn't come until 1916. Millions and millions of people died because America should have, and I'm not, it's hard to go in hindsight, but we should have stepped in earlier and stopped the fight. And then we had to do it again in World War II. But World War II, 200 million people were displaced by the time America got in because Pearl Harbor basically wiped out our entire Navy. People don't realize that. It took us 2 years to rebuild ships. We were lucky. We had one of our fleets out on doing some training exercise. If they would have all been in at Pearl Harbor, Japan would have pretty much wiped out. So this concept of always play defense, always be the pacifist, no. Here in Norway, there were some kids that I was with, these 4 kids that follow my stuff, and they were kind of bullying one of the other kids. And I just told the kid, I said, the smaller kid, I said, dude, trust me. I don't care what your parents say, what your priest says. Go take some I told them, do Muay Thai and do Jiu-Jitsu and lift a little bit of weights. You know, you only got to smack down one bully. And when I was in high school, first came to North Carolina, there was just 2 bully, identical twins. And they bullied everyone on the bus. I never forget, I was in freshman year. And they usually didn't, for some reason, I don't know if I was a new kid, they left me alone, but one of them smacked me in the back of the head. And they were so surprised. I turned around, jumped out of the thing, and grabbed them both together. They weren't that big, and I threw them and pinned them down and hit both of them. I hit them 30 times. And dude, it was funny. I became the hero. It was at Enloe High School in the inner city. It wasn't planned, and I'm not suggesting you hit somebody 30 times because you don't have to always do it literally. But think about women. Here's a good example. 1 out of 3 women, according to statistics, is somehow assaulted by a man. Raped, whatever, hit, whatever, intimidated. You ever seen Holly Holm? Ain't nobody intimidating her. Ronda Rousey? No, women should train in martial arts, all women. You know, you need to bring back the concept of the Amazon. Then men, I was watching this video of this black belt jiu-jitsu girl. Woo, I'll tell you, I challenge any dude to try to take advantage of this girl. She's gonna wrap you up and snap your arm, man, with an arm bar. It was funny. And I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under a guy named Higan Machado. I got my blue belt on him, and he told me there's a girl in Brazil that became famous because a guy came up to her late at night. She was going to her car in a parking lot, and he tried to grab her. I don't know if he was going to assault her, what he was going to do. And by the time the police got there, the police asked how many people beat up this guy, and she was like, it was just me. She destroyed. The guy was like begging the police, like, please take me, you know. So that's a situation, once again, and it has balance. You can't always go to war with people. That's why I said you have to reciprocate. So in that case of your friend texting you back, I can't help you, that's not a situation where you go to war against your friend, because maybe they have a legitimate reason that they can't show up. But it's okay to voice your opinion. And anybody you voice, like, and you can just say it normal. You can call them and be like, hey, I want to just get this out in the open because we're friends. I feel a little bit bothered because I helped you when you need help and you ain't helping me. And then let them talk, because maybe they say, you know, I broke my ankle, or my wife's giving birth or something. Then you're like, oh, of course, you don't want to jump to conclusion. But if they don't have a good reason, you know, you might have to say, it might be the greatest revelation you ever had. Maybe you had a fake friend. There's a lot of fake friends out there. Most people, or many people, care about themselves primarily, narcissistic. So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, is what I'm saying at the end of the day. But do it in a balanced way, and remember that tit for tat. If somebody's just being a little annoying, you can just be a little confrontative back. So you don't have to escalate it this far. And the interesting thing, in the computer simulation, there's only one exception to that, where tit for tat doesn't work in game theory. They used all these computers simulating people's behavior. The one example where it doesn't work is in a prison. If you go to a prison where everybody is violent, then you have to start out violent. and then be nice, then reciprocate. But in the modern world where we live, assuming you're not hanging out with a whole bunch of convicts or gangbangers or just, murderer psychopaths, assuming you're hanging out with somewhat normal people, you always start out nice and then you reciprocate. It's the same like the waitress at this freaking place we're at. Another example. We're here spending money, and we were recording a little video, and she just came up and was like talking right. There's 2 tables, and I'm like, hold on, we're recording for a second. Do you mind? I started out nice. I was like, do you mind taking the other table first so we can finish up? And she goes, rolled her eyes. Well, I was lucky she's Norwegian, because if she was American, I'd have been like, because I started out nice. She interrupted us. I didn't get mad. I was just like, hey, do you mind going over there? And then she was like, acting like a bitch. So I go, now's my turn. What's the opposite of a bitch? A dick. In America, I would have been like, what's your fucking problem? We're here paying you money. I'm asking a reasonable request. Go back to fucking waitress school. Jeez, it's called the hospitality business. You know what that means? You ain't in the fucking rude business. It's hospitality. That's what restaurants and hotels are. So sometimes you know what? She got my drift, even though she wasn't Norwegian. You notice how nice she was for the rest of the thing? I didn't have to say much. Because I looked at her like, and then I looked over at Umi and I was like, you're going to have to teach me some swear words. Like, what the fuck is your problem? And if the whole world did that and stood up a little more to justice, you can take it too far. Trust me, the reason half the world is dickheads is because nobody stands up to them. I've done a test recently on my Twitter. People talk shit like, oh, you rent your cars? I'm like, bitch, 100 grand fucking bet. Put your goddamn money where your mouth is. I'm happy, and I'll give it all to charity. You know what happens? People start shutting up. Most bully people, like, I've learned this. I train with some of the best fighters in the world. I'm not one of the best fighters, but I like to train with them and be around them. Every one of them is quiet. The only dudes, for the most part, that are out at bars picking fights, they're not the best fighters. You mark my... I lived in Miami, and I'm friends with the Nogueiras, and he was the heavyweight champion of the UFC, Pride, and then Minotauro Nogueira. He's a beast, 6'3", he's one of the legends, Hall of Famers in UFC. I've been out to clubs with him. He's the jolliest guy in the world. He doesn't bully anybody. He just laughs and you look at his face and you're like, this dude been punched before. But the point being, a lot of times people that are bullying or acting up like that, nobody's ever stood up to them. So there's exceptions. There are a few psychopathic people I've been around that are good fighters and bully people, but for the most part, they're jolly old people. So whenever you get around somebody that's trying to pick, and they've proven this, for example, the type of men who assault women are, it's this type of psychopathy. It's very interesting. I read this book. It's a clinical discussion of people, and most of those psychopaths, they actually have an uncanny sense of finding the most vulnerable person in the room. Like they've done double-blind scientific studies over and over again that people who take advantage of people's that are like serial, do it on a serial basis day after day, they don't do it to the strong. They do it to the weak. So if you strengthen yourself up a little bit, it will happen less to you. They'll move on to another target. It's a little bit like having a pit bull in your house. It doesn't guarantee, because a robber could come in and shoot your pit bull, but for the most part, robbers are looking for houses. They're going to skip to the next house. They're not going to go in yours. You put 6 Rottweilers in your house, 6 pit bulls, they're always picking. They're not doing like the movies, throwing meat out with little pills in it. No, they're going down the street, somebody that has, looks vulnerable. So be nice, but don't be vulnerable, is what I'm saying. And I'm not talking about emotional and relationships. I'm talking about to strangers. Be nice, but don't be a pushover. You stand your ground, be nice, start out firm, but nice, and then if it just keeps escalating, finally call them out. And Adam Carolla, I was on his podcast, and he has if you haven't read Adam Carolla's books, he got the funniest book. He said, one thing will make your life better is keep a cleverly loaded fuck you in your vocal barrier sometimes. He said, sometimes people will just, do something to him, and he just quickly fires off, and he's like, people like get shaken up. Like I said, you can take this too far. You can get into road rage incidents and all that stuff. You got to have half logic and half emotion. Don't get crazy like that. That football dude just got shot for a road rage incident. So don't take this video. And also, my last thing, my disclaimer: don't get in other people's business too much trying to do justice for them. Just try to have justice in your own life. I had a friend. We used to go to nightclubs, Herman. He would break up fights of random people we didn't know. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? That's the greatest way to die ever, because you break up a fight between two guys, they get mad and knock you out. And I was like, do you know those guys? Do you know what it's about? He's like, no, it just didn't look right to me. I'm like, no, that's what the police are for and the bouncers. So don't start getting all your friends' business and being like, oh, that guy's not treating you right. If it's egregious cases of bullying, like you're in school, and one kid's getting picked on every day in the locker room, that's different. That becomes your business. But don't jump in other people's business too much. It's a recipe. It's hard enough to clean your own front porch. Don't try to clean everybody. Craig said, do I still consider that friend a friend? Yeah, because everybody has a bad day. So the longer you've known the friend, you got to give people a pass sometimes. That's why I said it's more just in the moment checking them, which is what I've been doing. And it works. All of a sudden he's kind of like, oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot about that. Because a lot of what it is, it's just the built-in narcissism every one of us is guilty of. I'm guilty of. We always think. There's actually, I forget the term in logic. There's a term for that where we always, well, I'll put it to you this way in plain English. My mom used to say this actually. It was one of the best pieces of advice she used to tell me. People are always quick to forgive themselves and very nitpicky on you. So like the friend, if you wouldn't have gone to your friend when they needed help moving, they would have been critical and like, how dare you not? But when they can't help you, they'll be like, well, I've been having a long week and da da da. People always excuse themselves. So sometimes you just got to tell people, you can't be harder on me than you are on yourself. Let's call it even. Now, if you're super hard on yourself, then you can be hard on me. But you can't be easy on yourself. And for the very thing that I did to you, that I helped you with, you won't help me? No, that's not fair. So that's my answer. You give people a chance. If they're family, you give them a longer chance. But at the end of the day, sometimes 3 strikes is out, just like baseball. And the main thing I think to be nice about it is communicate. Because when you hold it in, then sometimes it's not fair because they didn't even realize they were doing something that offended you. You know, so I think you got to talk it out about 3 times. So 3 different incidents. The third one, if you've talked it out clearly and they ignore you, then they've given you all the signals in the world that they don't care about you. So why do you want that person in your life? You want people in your life that act upon what's called reciprocal altruism. The way, you know what the real wars in the world should be? And there was a Native American tribe centuries ago that used to do this. People should go to war with gifts. There was a tribes in like what's in modern day Oregon and stuff, and they used to do these things called potlatches, where one chief would throw a huge party for his enemy, and then this chief would come and he'd make it huge. He'd give him like 7 of his daughters. It was crazy back then. They'd have food to do this, all a year's worth of meat and all this. Then this chief had to go back, and if he couldn't top the guy, he lost the war. That's how war should be. That's what the Middle East versus, you know, these countries, America, all this conflict should be people. And that's how I think friendship should be. It should be, you're trying to do so much for your friend, and then he's like, shit, Ty just did so much for me. I'm going to one-up this guy. And it would be an escalation of competition, but wouldn't that be a nicer world? Be a great world. I should make a damn movie about that called, forget Pay It Forward, I'm going to call it Escalated Up or something like that. And you just keep raising the bar, you know, on what's right. And that's what I said, it's for your friends. You have to have allies. And some people will tell you don't keep track of favors. That's bullshit. Scientists have found over and over, your brain is a very cold, calculating, mathematical machine. If you get an imbalanced relationship with someone you're dating, friend, coworker, family, anybody, you can't help keeping track of it. So just forget it. Someone who tells you you shouldn't keep track of it is like someone telling you you shouldn't breathe. Just like, what are you talking about? I shouldn't breathe? Breathing is human. Keeping track. Now, I don't think you should micro do it. But one of my best friends, one of the reasons we became friends is we understood this right away. He had a business partner. We all three became friends. We're still friends to this day. And Mike is one of the guys' names. He is the king of keeping track who paid at the last dinner. It's insane, and it's very healthy. I don't know if he writes it down, if he has an Excel spreadsheet, but I haven't seen him in like a year. When I see him and we go to dinner, he'll be like, my turn. You paid 18 months ago. I'm like, how do you remember that? He's like, I remember. And he's quick to be like, your turn, Ty. And you know what happens? No animosity, because there's always that one friend you go out to eat and they're always in the bathroom when the bill comes. They're like, I drink a lot, man. I would have paid that bill. Eventually what you do with that friend is when he goes to the bathroom, you all leave. And you tell the waiter, oh, he'll be coming out of the bathroom to pay. Just wait for him. When he comes out, that waiter will be waiting right there. You guys are driving home. Okay? You can do it nice too. That's what I said. You don't always have to do it. Now, if your friend's broke, maybe you say, one thing you can do with your friends who's broke, and this actually make a relationship better, just be like, I'm gonna pay for dinner this year. I know you don't have much money. Our average meal about $100. One day, you're gonna pay me back $1,200, or donate to charity on my behalf. It makes relationships better. Don't listen to overly moralistic people that see the world in black and white and say that's not true. It is. Like I said, even people who are super religious, I'm like, read your book. Read your Bible. Jesus Christ, when he thought it was unfair that the tax collectors were taking too much money from the poor people, he wasn't a pacifist. He went into the temple and threw everything away. And then he said to somebody, he said, the kingdom of God is taken by violence. Exact words, look it up. Now you could say he was speaking figuratively, but that's not figurative. Freaking threw everything up in the air. Ruin these guys' businesses. I think there should be more. Some people think Malcolm X was not right in how he would, Malcolm X was violent. The Black Panthers were violent, and Martin Luther King Jr. was more of a pacifist. But no one knows. Maybe Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Panthers contributed to a lot of the success that Martin Luther King Jr. had and the whole civil rights movement. So you can't just say they weren't important. It's kind of like night and day. You need both. You need America, for example, in world affairs. We need to be peaceful and we need to do a lot of good stuff. But anyone who says you don't need a military, I can tell you who you are. You're a country who's benefiting from our damn military. A lot of countries in the world talk about, oh, you spend too much on military. I'm like, that's because we got to do it because you don't. Because trust me, there's bad people in the world at every point in history who will gladly invade Canada and Europe. And they ain't likely to do it if the United States got a big enough military. So, I'm not a Donald Trump per se supporter or a Hillary supporter, but I am a logic supporter. One of the things I believe about this conversation is everything I've been talking about. Everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but not everybody's entitled to their own facts. You ain't entitled to your own facts. I just gave you facts. You become a full peacemaker. Hitler almost took over the world. He had basically conquered completely Western Europe. The only thing that kept him from conquering Eastern Europe was some mud. They went in too late. He basically took over the UK because the UK wasn't ready. They were on the English Channel. All his generals are like, let's invade, we'll take it. And Hitler thought it was a trick. And on D-Day, Hitler overslept till 3 p.m. And none of his generals could react. And that is a bit... So we barely won World War II. We should have stepped in 1939 when they invaded Poland and be like, nip this shit in the bud. You don't want your enemy lifting weights and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You want to crush it when it's small. And that's why I'm just giving you examples. I'm not making opinions. I'm giving you facts. Over and over throughout history, people had to stand up. Look at civil rights. These people had to freaking get attacked by dogs, bit by dogs, because they were doing the normal channels. They were going through the Congress, and it wasn't working. Gandhi was in India. You know, he had to go on health strikes and walk across India, and people died in riots and all this. You can't be afraid of a little bit of conflict. Some people are just too conflict oriented. I just tell you from testing this, is very interesting. If you get somebody on your Facebook writing nasty comments too much, just write them back publicly and be like, what's your problem? If you don't stand up and you're not a target, you will become a target, because somebody always wants something that somebody else has, and it's a lot easier to take the wrong way. You know, it's a lot easier for you to help your friend out and them not to help you out from their perspective.